Hello, this is James Walsh from Walsh Gaming, and in this video we're going to be covering creating a texture from a photograph, turning it into a stone wall, and then creating a seamless tile texture. So this is the photograph we're going to be using inside Photoshop, and the first thing we want to do is we want to go out to the internet and grab our photo. So if you head over to cgtextures.com, and we'll get a photograph from here. Underneath rock, we have smooth. We want to go to the second page, the top row, and the third one over. If you left click on that, it'll bring up another page. Start with the one that is tiled, left click it and save it to your hard drive. Once you have it saved, open it back up inside Photoshop. Now at this point, if you haven't already, please stop the video and install the patterns into the Photoshop directory. Instructions and the pattern are included with this package. So once you've done that, we want to come back in here. The first thing we want to do is adjust our image size. You go to image and image size, and we want to change this to 512 by 512. If you remember, 512 is a power of 2 that we use. Click OK. The next thing we want to do is make this 100%, so come up here and click that down to 100. So now we have a nice visible size photograph that we can work with. Next thing we're going to do is come over to our layers. And if you take a look at our layers, we have a locked symbol over here, which means that we can't do very much with this layer. So we want to get rid of the lock symbol, and the way we do that is to create a new layer, and we're actually going to copy this layer. So we're going to drag this down right over top of the new layer button, and we have a new layer without the lock symbol. But now we want to get rid of this, so we're going to drag this down over top of the trash can and get rid of that. So now we have a nice layer to work with. So first thing we want to do is put our rock pattern or brick pattern on top of this. So we're going to right click it, click blending options, come down to texture. It puts a check mark automatically in texture and brings up patterns. So you want to click the down arrow, and if you don't have your patterns loaded already, you want to click this arrow here, come to load patterns, select rock pattern, and then click load. Once it loads up, you want to select the third rock pattern. So this starts my first rock pattern, so I'm going to come right here and select this one. And as you can see, it added the pattern on top, and now it looks like we have a nice set of stone bricks. But the next thing we want to do is we want to make some adjustments to this. If you look at our depth is 100%. But it doesn't give us much depth in our cracks, and the surface of the texture isn't very rough. So we're going to increase this to 150%. And now if you look, we have deeper cracks, and we have a much better texture on top of our surface of our rock. The next thing we want to do is adjust our scale. If you take a look at it, our rocks are pretty big. Each stone section is relatively big, so we don't need it that big, so we're going to adjust our scale. Now you can adjust your scale up or down. I'm going to adjust it down. And after experimenting around a little bit, I have found that I like 55%. This gives us a nice size brick to work with, a nice size stone. It gives us pretty good pattern overall without too much of repeats. And the next thing we're going to look at is, if you look right here at this crack and this crack up here, they're pretty close to lining up. This crack here and this crack here are pretty close to lining up. This will make it a lot easier for us to make this a seamless texture once we get to that stage. So I'm going to use 55 on a scale and 150 on the depth and click OK. And now we have that. Now if you take a look at our layers, you'll see that we have the effects and the bevel and boss. But we want these included inside the layer permanently. So right now they're not. If we were to copy this over, we would lose our effects, which would lose all of our brick pattern that we just put on. So the easiest way to do this is to save it. Click File, Save. I'm going to just call it Rock. I'm going to drop it down. I'm going to save it as a PNG. You can save it with whatever you want. I'm saving it as a PNG to put it into UDK later. So I'll click Save. Interlace. We no longer use interlace, so we want to click None. And now we want to get rid of this, so we're going to close it. It's going to ask us to save it again. We already saved it, so we can click No. We're going to do a File, Open, come back in and select our Rock PNG. Now if you notice, we still have our effects put on top of the stone, but we don't see them over here anymore. They are now permanently included in our photograph, into our texture, and that is exactly what we want. So now at this point, what we're going to do is create another layer. So I'm going to copy this down, drag drop, and there we go, and we have a new layer. Now I'm going to take the eye off the top layer, so we're only looking at the bottom layer right now, and I'm going to highlight the bottom layer. So what we want to do at this point is we want to shift our offset. So we're going to go to Filter, and if you don't see Other, like on mine you don't, click Show All Menu Items, and now we have Other, and click Offset. Now, if you remember, our texture we set to 512 by 512, so we want our offset to be half of that. So I'm going to set 256 by 256 and click OK. And now we have our offset. Now if you look at our texture, you can clearly see a seam coming down here, and you can see a seam coming over here. So we want to get rid of those ugly seams. What we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our top layer. I'm going to turn it back on so we can see it. And now you can see we don't see the seams anymore because we're looking at a different layer. Now what we want to do is we want to add a layer mask, and that's this button here. Now if you just click the layer mask, you'll notice that it pops up with a white square. We do not want a white square, so we can just drag the square back down, put it over the trash can, and get rid of it. What do we want to do? Apply it? Nope. Cancel it? Nope. We want to delete it. So at this point what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Alt key and now hit the mask. And now you'll see a black box over here. And what happened over here? You can see our seams again. This mask acts just like a window. So we're looking through this window down to this texture, and that's why we are seeing our seams pop up again. What we want to do is we're going to actually paint on this window the top texture to cover up the bottom texture. So over here we have white and we have black. If you don't have white and black, set them to white and black. You can just click on them and change the numbers 255, 255, 255, and all zeros for black. Click OK. We want to select a brush. I'm going to be using a brush size of 25. So you can just put 25, hit enter, and then come back out here. Now remember I said this acts just like a window. The white will paint on top of the window the top texture. So if I just click here, you can see that I painted the texture underneath. And if you look over here, it may be hard to see in the video, there is a little white speck on top of the black. If you notice though, I now have a horizontal line here. This comes from the horizontal cracks in the top photo. And we'll take care of that later, so they're just fine to leave right now. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to do this whole seam. Now, if you notice what I did, I now lost my line here and lost my line here because I came straight down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this back and I'm going to go to black. And black will allow me to paint back over top of it. So I'm just going to go right back. And as you can see, it adds the seam back in. Because what we're doing is we are actually removing the paint, showing the underneath layer again. So I'm going to flip back to white. And now this I'm going to click more carefully as I go down the line. Now I'm going to come across my horizontal and get rid of that seam too. This one I can drag a little bit more. So now that I have that taken care of, I now have to take care of some other problems. These lines that I added back in horizontally, I added one in vertically, and these still don't line up quite right. So what we want to do at this point though is we're done using the layer mask. So we want to collapse our mask and our layer into one. You can hit Control and click each layer, or you can click the top one and hit Shift and click the bottom layer. More useful if you have more layers than two. Once you have both of them highlighted, hit Control and E key, E for Edward, and it will collapse this all up. Now we no longer are working with our layer masks. Now what we want to do is come back in here, and to get rid of the extra stuff, I'm going to use this here, which is called the healing brush. And I'm going to turn this back down to 25. Come in here and I'm just going to click. A couple times until you get rid of it. So I'm just going to come over. Get rid of that too. We'll get rid of our vertical lines that we added in. Make that look a little more authentic. So now that we have that taken care of, what we want to do is we want to come over and use this here, which is our cloning stamp. And we're going to add our vertical lines in. And how we're going to do this is we're actually going to select another vertical line. Again, I'm going to hold my Alt key. As you can see, it changes the cursor. And I'm just going to click the mouse, and now I'll let go. Now if you look, as I drag the mouse, you can actually see inside the little window of what it's going to do. So I'm going to come here, hold my mouse key down, and add in my vertical line. Now I'm going to select this again, come back at my Alt key, select it again, and come over here and do this one. If you don't re-hit your Alt key, as you can see as it slides, it changes. So you want to re-hit your Alt key each time you do your own line. Now at this point, we have a pretty good texture. I want to come and clean this up a little bit yet. Okay, I want to add in another horizontal line there, so I'll come back to my stamp tool. And now I'm going to take a quick look at all my lines, see how they look. They're looking pretty good. Oops. I can do an edit, undo, or step backwards because I added in a line I didn't want there. Alright, so overall that looks pretty good. We no longer see our seam running up the middle. We no longer see our seam running through the middle. And all of our lines are now connected. So now we have a seamless texture and it's tileable. So we want to test this out. So first thing we're going to do is create a new texture. And we want to double the size of it. This was originally 512 by 512, so I'm going to go to 1024 by 1024. Click OK. Come back here, do a select all, hit edit, copy, come over here, hit edit, paste, and I'll paste it on. Select the very top, move, and we'll move it into space. Now I'm going to hit Control V to add another one on. I'm going to hit Control V to put another one on. And I'm going to hit Control V once more to put another one on. Now if you take a look, you don't see any seams. And it tiled perfectly for us. So that is a way you can manually add in a seamless texture and tile it yourself inside Photoshop. And if you don't like these, since they repeat, you can simply use the cloning brush again, the healing brush, or do another layer mask and take care of cleaning those up. But for the purpose of this video, we'll let it slide. In the next video, we'll be going over how to create a bump map produced from this actual image right here.